Welcome to Voices. This is a panel presented by an honors class this semester, and I have to tell you that this is the first honors class that I've taught. And when I came to St. Catherine's from a large university, one of the things that I knew that I would miss is my graduate classes. The rich discussions that you have in graduate classes, the intellectual honesty that happens there. And I have missed that until this class. And this honors program is just incredible, and these students are incredible. And they have equaled any graduate classes that I've ever taught. So I'm really proud to be part of this honors program. These students have studied this semester 5 women activists, scholars, writers, poets, and in doing so, what they've done is they've found their own voices through reading and studying these women and hearing their lectures and thinking a little bit about what having a voice means and how to use your voice in a way that you really communicate what you want to communicate. So I'm really proud to present the Voices panel and would ask you to listen very carefully. Thank you.
You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? That I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room? Just like moons and just like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, I'll rise. Do you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't take it so hard just because I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meaning of my thoughts? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise.
As students at SCC, in practice to lead, in learning to be the future, we must act mindfully, employ compromise, and interact dialogically. What does this mean? We draw on contemporary thinkers such as philosopher Hannah Arendt, poet Maya Angelou, scholar Bell Hooks, activist Arundhati Roy, and writer Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie to articulate how we might create a dialogic community. In such a community, people allow themselves to open their minds to the ideas and thoughts of others. We will each cover a specific contemporary thinker and means of how they show these ideas and how we can alter those ideas to create a better community at SCC.
You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Born April 4th, 1928 in St. Louis as Margaret Johnson, Dr. Maya Angelou was raised in both Missouri and Stamps, Arkansas. During her childhood in Stamps, Angelou experienced the tribulations of racial discrimination, but this never curbed her passion for the arts. In her lifetime, Maya Angelou traveled the globe and accomplished many things. In the 1950s, she toured Europe, where she studied modern dance. A year after recording her first album in 1957, she returned to the States to reside in New York, where she joined the Harlem Writers Guild and performed in an off-Broadway production before writing and performing in her own. In 1960, she uprooted again and headed to Cairo, Egypt to be an editor for an English weekly publication. Not yet done with her travels, she then moved to Ghana to teach at the University of Ghana's School of Music and Drama, in addition to working as a feature editor. As if mastering French, Spanish, Italian, Arabic, and a West African language was not exciting and impressive enough, Angela's studies abroad allowed her to collide with Malcolm X. This collaboration allowed Angela to return to America to assist in building Malcolm's Organization of African American Unity, but shortly after her arrival, he was assassinated and the organization fell through. After this tragedy, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. asked Angela to serve as Northern Coordinator for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, but MLK's assassination in 1968 left her devastated. But through this came even greater beauty from Maya Angelou. It was in this time period she began work and published her renowned novel, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Flying through the world of film and television as well, Angelou's literary publications reached to 30 best-selling pieces of work. However, my purpose for being here is not to tell you that Angelou has served on 2 presidential committees, received countless awards, 3 being Grammys, and even composed and read a poem for President Clinton's inauguration. It is instead to relate the trials and achievements Angela has experienced with those of the modern-day student. Maya Angelou can be described as a woman with a very strong voice, but at what price did this voice come? To say that Angelou rose from racial discrimination is an understatement, because all those who are familiar with her biggest piece of literature know this to be only part of the reason she became such an influential woman in her life. At age 7, Maya Angelou was visiting her mother when she was sexually abused by her mother's boyfriend. Ashamed, she only confided in her brother. When she learned that an uncle had killed her abuser, she felt responsible, as if her words had killed the man. It was because of this that Angelou was mute for 5 years. Angelou describes mutism as a drug, saying that it is addictive. You don't have to do anything. The thought of mutism can remind us all that we're all mute at some point or in some areas of our lives. Many times in society, we come across women that are mute in their relationships or citizens who are mute in their role in government. There are even those people who believe women or children should be mute in most or all aspects of their lives. As a very opinionated person, I could not imagine not being able to verbally express my thoughts and emotions. Something intangible is lost when you can't hear someone say the words I love you, passion is taken from angry words, and sorrow is not always detected. To be mute for 5 years drastically increases the amount of everyday or milestone life experiences that became more difficult for Angelou and the countless others who are mute in the world today. As a college student, I've come to realize how important having a voice really is. We're our own community, and without communication, a society cannot function. One of the best examples of the necessity that is the college student's voice is advising. At this level of education, we're choosing our paths for the rest of our lives. During advising sessions, sometimes students are given detailed scripts of what their academic college experience should look like. Freshmen in particular rejoice at the help of their advisors. However, some advisors are more like decision makers for their students. If as students we're not able to make the decisions to achieve our future goals on our own, how are we to truly achieve what it is we are after? If as a biology major I am instructed to take classes that do not interest me or fit the pre-professional study of veterinary science I'm currently involved in, am I using my time and energy in a beneficial way? I'm an advocate for well-roundedness, and I'm under no impression that colleges should not require general education classes for graduation, but in our college years, we reach a point where our main and sometimes only focus is pointed directly ahead at our future goal. Having set one so high myself, being achieved high grades in my science-based classes in order to be accepted in Auburn's veterinary school, my sights have been set on my future since I walked away with my high school diploma in 2012. When students encounter these overly helpful decision-making advisors, how is this any different than mutism? Advising is supposed to be about helpful pushes along our way, and it's ideally more negotiable than many of us have encountered. Too many times, students have left their advising meetings feeling pushed down rather than pushed forward, and disappointed with their lack of choices. Maya Angelou felt as if her words had killed a man, and the way she worked towards a redeeming image of herself was to be mute. While we can all agree that her words did not kill a man, or that stripping herself from all verbal expression was not the best choice, I think it's something most all can relate to. And particularly, when we as students are feeling repressed by our advisors, we're feeling muted in our own choices. These choices are supposed to be mine to make for my future. Does the society and community want to mute college students? Is that their main goal? What is to gain from muting our future doctors, teachers, and government leaders? Let us be mute no longer so that we can break open the cage and succeed in our lives in all the ways that are important to us as individuals. Let students be heard in their choices, so they're not accustomed to mutism in the stretch of their lives. I asked not to mute myself for 5 years, but to be heard with my urgent voice, the voice of the college student. I know why the caged bird sings, and I know it is my time to break out of the cage that has held me. Here to break out of her cage as well, I would like to introduce Casey Bartlett to speak to us about Hannah Arendt. Born October 14, 1906, to a German Jewish family in Königsberg, Germany. Once the Holocaust hit, Arendt fled to Paris in 1933. In Paris, she worked with refugee organizations. She was married to Kinrich Blucher in 1940. In 1941, she immigrated to the United States with her husband and mother and became part of an intellectual circle in New York. She found more refuge in America, and within a year she began writing many articles for the Parisian Review. Arendt published over 20 pieces in her lifetime. Some include The Origins of Totalitarianism, The Human Condition, Eichmann in Jerusalem, A Report on the Banality of Evil, and the first 2 volumes of The Life of the Mind. In 1951, Hannah Arendt gained her American citizenship. She died in New York at age 69 on December 4, 1975. Arendt talks a lot about praxis. Praxis is defined as translating an idea into action. Action is a hopeful beginning, whether it be on a global scale or a smaller scale. Praxis, or informed action, can be viewed as a process of human togetherness. Arendt viewed it this way and conceptualized a participatory democracy which stood in direct contrast to the illicit forms of government. Arendt also stressed that action is one of the fundamental categories of the human condition which constitutes the highest realization of the vita activia. Vita activia is defined as a life lived in active involvement in the political arena. What does this mean? It means that through Arendt's thinking, our action puts us above the life of animals but below the life of gods. It separates us also with the 2 other fundamental activities, labor and work. Not only does Arendt talk about praxis, but she also speaks about mindlessness. Hannah Arendt is famous for her book, Eichmann in Jerusalem, A Report on the Banality of Evil. She tells us that evil comes out of mindlessness. A good example she gives us of this is Adolf Eichmann. He was one of Hitler's men from the Nazi war and Holocaust era. She followed his trial in Israel, where he was faulted for obedience and not thinking. This accumulates to mindlessness. Eichmann was a joiner, not intelligent, not mental, and not psycho. He simply did as he was told without thought. A mindless act is doing without thinking, and it is something many people do multiple times a day. Not all mindless acts are bad. It could be something as simple as brushing our teeth, but the one Hannah Arendt talks about are the bad ones. These acts could be something such as following orders without consciousness or consequence, like Eichmann did. Controversy is something Hannah Arendt dealt with a lot. The controversy over the Holocaust, for example. The main thing about controversy, whether it be between 2 people or a community, is to figure out how to resolve it. But how do we maintain it? It seems that action is something in which many colleges, such as SCC, struggle, especially with regard to student voice. For example, promising to act on certain student suggestions and requests. Too often, college administrators and other staff make concessions in response to students' concerns, such as promising a needed policy change, and fail to follow through. When such promises are made to students and not kept, students feel disregarded, unimportant, and frustrated. Yet college is about the free exchange of ideas, learning to think critically, and growing into adulthood. Ignoring what is important to students silences them in ways and do not build confidence, nor does it promote self-efficiency. Learning to resist what is wrong, to refine one's voice, and to speak truth to power is not advanced by hollow promises. In sum, college students need to be heard and their ideas respected. Too often, however, college administrators seem threatened when students speak up, point out inconsistencies, and resist or protest practices that negatively affect them. The question is really, how are they to learn, refine their voices, and think critically when their ideas are ignored or suppressed? All of these critically thinking women have contributed great ideas and created change in people's thinking. Not overnight, not without practice in safe environments, and not through unkept promises. Another figure who talks about issues regarding voice is Arundhati Roy, and here's Lauren Johnston to speak about her.
Arundhati Roy, born in Kerala, India in 1961, raised mostly by her Christian mother, but her father was Hindu. Influenced by her mother, who was a social activist and independent school teacher, she also became a social activist. She has published several screenplays, multiple political and cultural essays, and the renowned book, The God of Small Things. Roy speaks mostly through the eyes of those who have been misrepresented by a government or stereotype. She opens minds to ideas other than their own and allows them to temporarily see circumstances through the eyes of the beholder by using her voice. A voice that is heard over violence, a voice that reverberates into the ears of her peers, a voice that has the possibility of sending a call to action, being heard by those who want to listen, and speaking still to those who do not. Oftentimes, people in power make decisions on behalf of those who they believe don't know what they need. They jar up every voice but their own, shove them to the back of the shelf, and forget they even exist. Sadly, this is the reality of many countries and people. I don't plan on giving a history lesson here, but I want you all to recount the recent injection of democracy into Afghanistan and Iraq. Neither country welcomed the idea or the implementation. It has been 10 plus years since the war on terrorism began, and we are now seeing the effects of the seeds that were planted. The trees of this labor were expected to produce ripe, edible fruit, but instead, rotten fruit has since dropped from the tree rather than being plucked. This is a global example of power and the effects when the voices that are supposed to be represented are put in a jar. Roy states in her speech, come September, quote, I believe that the accumulation of vast, unfettered power by a state or a country, a corporation, or an institution, or even an individual, a spouse, a friend, a sibling, regardless of ideology, results in excesses, end quote. Today I speak of power in an institution specifically. An institution in which the community is well-educated, able-bodied, and able-minded, but continues to feel that their voice is locked inside of a jar. Without anyone to listen, who is expected to speak up? Decisions are made every day on behalf of this community of students, faculty, and staff. Not every decision requires the input of community members, understandably, but how often are their ideals and opinions needed, and when relayed, how often are they actually considered? As of late, there have been many discussions amongst students in particular regarding this, as we view it now, issue. If there is no confidence shown in the ability to make intellectual decisions, then the voices of those students will vanish, one by one, until you have an empty room and a cupboard full of jars. Who will be the one to open up those jars and hear what they had to say? Extracting power evokes powerlessness. When those who are in power make decisions for the powerless have no purpose, no contribution. Having the purpose of bettering the community in which they live, the purpose of creating a place of joy, the purpose of creating a place where those who have a voice should be able to use it. Being told what to do and act, rather than being asked or guided, is one of the main extractions of power present in this college community and perhaps many others. Along with the extraction of power come those who want to create dialogue in order to have a voice and regain the dignity of voice through active participation. Dialogue, by definition, is the exchange of ideas and opinions. Creating a dialogic community begins by having an open mind, regardless of whether or not that you agree. Being dialogic allows everyone to have a voice with the guarantee that it will not be silenced, even in disagreement. Having a dialogic community allows voices to be heard, minds to be changed, and the free exploration of ideas. Unfortunately, the mere relay of information is not considered dialogue. If we are to become a true dialogic community, many minds must be open to listening and at least hypothetically promote new ideas and critical thinking. There is a long road ahead, but our future depends on it. Creating a dialogic community in a place where people who are well educated can participate and expand their knowledge is the key to our success. It is the key to learning and growth. And now I'd like to introduce Amanda Conrad, who will speak on the implementation of dialogue through the ideas of bell hooks.
I am passionate about everything in my life. First and foremost, passionate about ideas, and that's a dangerous person to be in this society. Not just because I am a woman, but because it's such a fundamentally anti-intellectual and anti-critical thinking society. Bell Hooks is a passionate woman about many things, one of which happens to be using words to create a dialogic community instead of acting aggressively. Many people wonder if there are other ways to address important issues, and more often not, they find themselves thinking without listening. Bell Hooks has studied long and hard to find a way to approach topics with an open mind and works on teaching others the many things she has learned. She has overcome much strife to get where she is today. As a well-known author, feminist, and scholar, she has written many books. Born in 1952 in Kentucky, she lived through the civil rights movement and has used those experiences to her advantage. Focusing her writing on race, gender, class, and sexual oppression has forced her to re-innovate herself. It is stated that bell hooks used to be a speak first, ask questions later type, but has since reformed with education. One of her main topics is the importance of a dialogic community and the needs and problems this can solve for us. As bell hooks said, being oppressed is the absence of having choice, and she's 100% correct. But in America, we pride ourselves on always having a choice. Therefore, in most cases, we are never truly oppressed by anything other than our own thought processes. I have found myself wondering if I really had a choice in the direction my life was heading, but I have since realized that when I am involved with something, I have nothing but choices, if only I take the time to realize this. I have been speaking with my superiors on campus before about various issues I face, only to find myself leaving those conversations frustrated. It seemed when faced with issues that these people couldn't control, or dare I say it, didn't want to, they focused on the minute details I spoke on. Pondering over these situations pushed me to want just one option: to transfer. There I go, guilty as charged of oppressing myself. But truly, I just needed to open my eyes. When faced with adversity, I tried to take the easy way out, when really I had countless other options, one of which being the unthinkable: to stay. Not just to stay on campus and close my mouth, but to stay and fight, to fight for my right, for my dialogic community. To become a dialogic thinker, it helps to realize that we oppress our own thoughts when we ignore what others say. Keep your mind open as others speak instead of focusing on what you want to say. You do yourself and the person you are listening to a favor. Otherwise, it's a disservice and a complete waste of time. Justice demands integrity. It's to have a moral universe. Not only to know what is right or wrong, but to put things in perspective. Weigh things. Justice is different from violence and retribution. It requires complex accounting. Bell hooks. There are many times that there have been issues on campus and off, personal and non, that we react without thinking. When this happens, it takes more time at the end of the day to settle these than it does if we would just think things through first. Because at the start, we had no point other than to be heard. This is something that bell hooks has come to terms with. She makes many comments in her speeches about how she used to be considered the angry black woman of her friends and how everybody used to love that. But now that she is more educated, she has changed and no longer jumps to conclusions. To speak from experience and to speak about my campus again, I have found myself in situations that neither party involved wanted to hear each other out and just wanted to be heard. At the end of these conversations, all parties involved left feeling jaded, offended, and confused, when in reality it could have ended much better, much different. It is human nature to place blame, but it is also human nature to feel blame. So instead of falling victim to those ideas, focus on the words of others instead of your emotions. Do not just hear what you want to hear and go on the defense. We should teach ourselves to weigh our situations and find any integrity in the situations we are in that we can. In the end, it is better to feel slightly ashamed of ourselves, but to find a solution, than it is to yell just to feel better in that second. When culture is based on a dominator model, not only will it be violent, but it will frame relationships as power struggles. What Bell Hooks means by this is if we don't escape the dominator model we have fallen a victim to, our struggles will quickly turn into violent power struggles. In America, we are known for our power struggles. Be it political, social, or religious, it doesn't really matter. As humans, it is natural for us to lash out at these power struggles, just to show who is alpha, but is that really our best answer? Doesn't it take less energy to speak calmly and address the wrongdoings than it does to throw a tantrum, much like a 2-year-old? If we can keep our mind open and worry about the situations or issues at hand, we allow ourselves to really come up with the best solutions. Instead of thinking about your next line as someone speaks, you need to think about what they are saying all the way until they finish. I can say that I fully believe that if our students did not feel so powerless on campus, we would all have a much better climate and culture. Students have come to me complaining of faculty and staff not hearing them and how miserable it makes them. To argue our points so repetitively leaves us frustrated with bitter taste in our mouths. Much like playing cat and mouse, we seem to continue to chase each other across the floor on 2 totally different planes, never even reaching one another. Proving your point is more powerful when you have all the facts instead of just the first 3 lines someone has spoken. How many times have we been speaking or arguing with someone just to realize that we are both arguing the same exact point, just wording it differently? That all could have been saved if we would have learned how to think and speak dialogically. There is always time to change the way we react to situations, no matter how old we are. We need to think about the best way to breach a topic. Should we use anger and violence to make a point, or is it best to take the active but dialogic road? Even as a student in college, we are never without choices, so we are never truly oppressed. It really takes time to learn how to weigh out options on how we can react, but in the end, it will benefit us more to listen before we jump in head first. We cannot fall to the same social reflex as always, and let our world keep wandering further into this dominator model. It is up to us as the future of this school to change our community, our nation, our world, and most importantly to us, our campus. Like Bell Hooks, be passionate about life, but monitor the way that passion comes out. Don't let it take over your brain, because our society is known as fundamentally anti-intellectual and anti-critically thinking. Starting now, let's think through more than just what we want to see. Let's wait and see what we need to say to reach those goals. And now I would like to welcome Rebecca Just to reiterate the power of voice for us.
Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie is another great example of a woman with a strong voice. She is a Nigerian writer who splits her time in Nigeria and the United States. The majority of Adichie's work is about the life in Nigeria and the transition from living in Nigeria to the United States. Through her writing, you can see the strong voice Adichie possesses. She's a feminist and openly states her opinion on controversial topics. Her voice reflects her ways of working through the condensation she has received as an African woman in the literary community. Adichie speaks up about the equality of all the injustices in the world we live in today. Adichie's strong voice can be a model for others. One situation we can look at is Nigeria's new anti-gay laws. When talking about the new laws, Adichie was openly disapproving because of the injustice she saw in these laws. She realized she had a voice in Nigeria, so she used it to try to get the Nigerian people to think level-headed and see the other side of things. Knowing the reaction she would get from the people in Nigeria, she continued to write about her outrage. People who previously loved Adichie no longer felt that way about her because she supported gay people. Everyone should feel comfortable standing up for their beliefs when they see unfair treatment going on. No one should feel like they don't have a voice or a say on what is occurring in the world around them. The United States is a privileged country compared to many others, such as Nigeria, where we the people actually have some say in decisions made. Take the Bill of Rights, for example. That is a list of some of the rights everyone should have just by being a citizen of the United States. These rights are often taken away from students on a college campus. By doing this, colleges are limiting the students in a time where they should be learning the most about life and as well as being prepared for success in the working world. It is more important now than ever these students are treated like adults because in a little bit, if not already, students will be living on their own and supporting themselves. Colleges should be trying to help this cause rather than hindering the voices of students. College students are the future and should be viewed as equals amongst others. This not only applies to a college campus, but the world in general. It is time to push the younger generation to do great things. Do not try to overprotect students because this is setting up the community for failure in the end. Years down the road, the damage done by restraining students will become very obvious, and at that point it will be too late. Something needs to be done now. Campuses across America need to join together and say we are going to make college a better place for students to be. College is home for many students, so institutions should be pushing the students towards independence and being respectable citizens in the community. Teach the students how to use their rights to the fullest and how to make the greatest impact on the world. This is what is needed, and this is what college students want. College students just want to have equal say and rights as they deserve. Ask them what they want. Do not just assume. We'd like to conclude our panel with thanks to all of you for listening to our voices, as well as helping us practice for Denver, which we are so excited to present. Whether bold, intelligent, articulate, urgent, or passionate, our voices are meant to be heard. Thank you for giving us your time.